Today, the UK government defends itself in court over the supply of fighter jet parts to Israel amid investigations of genocide in Gaza. Campaigners from Palestinian rights group Al-Haq and the Global Legal Action Network, or GLAN, are attempting to force the government to stop supplying F-35 components to Israel. Although this is officially day one of a 4-day trial, it marks the culmination of a legal battle that began 19 months ago and has only reached the High Court after a successful appeal against the government's attempt to dismiss it. Since the first challenge in October 2023, the case has become focused on F-35 jets since the Labour government suspended 30 arms licences to Israel in September last year, but it carved out an exemption for the aircraft's component parts. The government argued that this exemption was necessary to protect the UK's worldwide F-35 programme, but their challengers describe it as a deliberate loophole to continue supplying weapons to Israel. Joining us now to lay out the evidence is the director of the Global Legal Action Network, Garud O'Quinn. Welcome to Middle East Eye Live. This whole trial centres... Good afternoon. This whole trial centres around the potential supply of parts for F-35 jets. Tell us why. How deadly are these jets, and what role are they playing in the war on Gaza?
Sure. The F-35 warjet is the weapon of choice for the Israeli military in their offensive on Gaza. It is a platform capable of delivering multi-ton munitions, and Lockheed Martin, its manufacturer, boasts about it being the most lethal warjet on the planet. We have seen as well clear evidence that the F-35 warjet has been extensively used. Over 8,000 missions have been flown over Gaza, racking up in excess of 15,000 hours, requiring a good deal of maintenance and support and parts, which are supplied by the British. 15% of the F-35 is British made. So it's a critical, these are critical components for the jet's functioning. They include, laser targeting, fuselage, ejector seats, really key components without which the F-35 would not be able to fly.
And how much evidence is there that this direct supply chain exists? It's notoriously difficult to trace these trades very often, and particularly with the case of F-35 parts, the government has said, they've said it's pretty much untraceable. So yeah, how much evidence is there that this is a problem, and at what scale?
Well, it's clear that British weapons are making their way indirectly to Israel. So back in September, an hour before coming into court as part of our proceedings and under threat of injunction, the UK government suspended 30 arms export licenses. These were for weaponry, munitions and tank parts that were deemed to be directly deployed in the context of Gaza. But they made a deliberate loophole for the F-35 fighter jet. So they suspended direct exports, but made a loophole for the indirect exports, which make their way via a global pool of spare parts, from which manufacturers in the United States draw from to build the F-35 and sell this and provide this to Israel. And recently there have been another shipment of jets. So it's very open and clear that from that process and the government's own account, that British parts are going there. The question becomes, can they turn a blind eye? Is this sort of loophole that they have put forward, is it lawful? And the government argued that it was not possible to trace when a part would end up going to Israel, as if a complex military is unable to account for where its components go. This is absolutely possible, and that's what we're arguing in court. And on that basis, it is possible for them to identify and stop parts ending up in Israel, but maintaining the F-35 program in other settings where the rule of law is respected.
You just alluded to this decision by Labour in September last year to suspend 30 out of 350 arms licenses to Israel. You said that this happened just hours before you were, set to file a legal challenge against them. Is the implication there that the government suspended these arms licenses in order to avoid that lawsuit? Was that a direct relation?
Yes, the government had made its assessment, and it was revealed in September of last year that, by its own assessment, it did not believe that Israel was capable or committed to complying with international humanitarian law. And there was a serious risk, a real risk that British weaponry, if provided, would be used in serious violations of international humanitarian law. So this became the basis on which they decided to suspend. But we know that they sat on that for a number of months before acting. So it does feel like that the government is delaying, only doing what is absolutely necessary, and is stretching legal arguments and language to breaking point, where they provide really absurd bases for making these exceptions.
Mm-hmm. Given that the government did suspend these arms sales, though, in response to your initial challenge, and I suppose also reflecting on the response that you've had from the government to the issues that you have raised throughout this 19-month process, do you think there are any real concerns within the government about the supply of arms to Israel, or do you think that this is just about watching their back?
Well, I think the British government has been explicit in making the exception for the F-35 warjet. They conducted a weighing exercise, and they considered the UK-US relationship. That was very much to the front of their mind, and that less F-35 warjets in the hands of the likes of Israel would lead to it would undermine international peace and security. So it's clear that they're putting these interests and the contracts with weapons manufacturers and their profits over and above the human life in Gaza and the international legal protections that have been in place since the Second World War. They're actively undermining these really important protections, the international law itself, and pandering to the whims of the Trump administration. So, our case has helped. The court, the UK government was forced to reveal its assessment about Israel. It wasn't something it was eager to share, and in having that exposed in open court, also betrayed the actual considerations that caused them to create this deliberate loophole. That seems to be it, and the government's position has sort of changed over time over the course of this case. Certain arguments have fallen away, and I believe now they really are cornered. So it's going to be a very interesting few days in court ahead of us.
Garudo Quinn, thank you for your time. Now, viewers, you can keep up to date.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can keep up to date with the case at MiddleEastEye.net. Middle East Eye's senior investigations editor, Danya Akkad, has not only traced the case since its origins, she's been at the court today to hear the government's defense. Here is her update from the High Court.
The atmosphere in front of the courthouse today was pretty animated. There were probably maybe about a little under 100 supporters, pro-Palestinian supporters, who gathered in front of the courthouse before the hearing happened. One of the lawyers for the claimants told me that just kind of seeing this atmosphere, having waited 19 months to see, when this judicial hearing would actually start, was quite moving. Basically, El Haq and Glan hold that the government has violated its own obligations under domestic and international laws. And the government holds that it hasn't. And the focus now has been on UK-made F-35 parts that are being sent to a global pool, which then feeds spare parts to different partners in the F-35 program, including Israel. The government has argued that it couldn't stop sending F-35 parts to this global pool because those parts aren't tracked and traced. Therefore, for the government to make sure that its parts didn't go to Israeli fighter jets from that global pool, they would have had to stop sending parts altogether to the global pool. And this would have been hugely problematic to the F-35 program and would have real issues for peace and security internationally, according to the government. El Haq and Glan are saying, well, no, you should be able to stop those parts, and you have a duty to stop sending those parts because of the conventions and treaties that you signed on to, like the convention, the Genocide Convention and the Arms Trade Treaty, and also by the government's own standards, its criteria for deciding when and if it okays arms exports. So I would say one of the real takeaways I've gotten from today is learning about kind of the decision-making process once Labor came into power in July. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said that on his first day in office, he asked for new advice to be gathered to inform his decision-making going forward on what to do about arms exports to Israel. And it seems that by July 24th, so about 19 days into office, he had some analysis before him to make a decision. The Labor government then partially suspended around 30 licenses on the 2nd of September. I would love to know what happened between July 24th and the 2nd of September. Why did it take 5 weeks to make that decision? What was going on?
That was Danya Akkad, Senior Investigations Editor here at Middle East Eye. Now, as Danya reported, protesters have gathered outside the court to add their voices to this legal battle, which is also backed by Oxfam, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty. Our reporter Tamara Himani spoke to those in the crowd. Among them were MPs, including from the government's own party. Here's what they had to say.
I don't think that the British government is just complicit. I think they are actively facilitating genocide through arms sales, through diplomatic cover, through surveillance. 42 MPs, myself included, have written to David Lammy to explain why arms sales, according to Israel's tax authority and import data, show that arms sales have continued, including F-35s, and the allegation that he has misled Parliament alongside other ministers.
Over the last 19 months of this unfolding genocide, every single F-35 plane that has dropped 200-pound bombs on Gaza, known to kill in a way that is indiscriminate, has had British parts inside it, has British complicity, has British partnership inside it. We literally have millions of people whose lives hang in the balance right now. So everything anyone can do to expand the base of their solidarity is needed now.
David Lammy has been answering questions or failing to answer questions from us for almost a year now on these issues. He started off by saying that they couldn't control what happened to the parts for the F-35 jets, refuses to answer questions about the use of the Royal Air Force Base at Akrotiri in Cyprus, and then claimed that weapons were not being sent when they were being sent. And he also at various times has either said there is or isn't a genocide. He doesn't seem able to make up his mind on that one. It is a shambles, the way the government is presenting its case, but beneath all that is the most appalling deception that somehow or other they're not complicit in the acts of genocide when they clearly are.